Stop! This is the second part of a two-part review. I partnered up with Vocal Pineapple to review My Hero Academia Season 4, and the first half of our review, which covered the overhaul arc, is on his channel. Link is in the description below. I highly suggest you check that out first. So, after me and Pineapple looked at the inconsistent roller coaster of highs and lows that was the overall arc, which was blessed by moments of intense emotion and mired by dips of laughable production and directorial gaffes, we are now back and ready to discuss the second half of the season, which covered the Remedial Course arc, the Culture Festival arc, and the Bro Hero arc. Let's go! And what better place to start than at the beginning, with Remedial. But, before we actually do that, let's mention something I only briefly teased in part 1. Bones' sudden enthusiasm for cutting shit out. The first and arguably most egregious example of that came at the tail end of the overall arc, when Bones, in their never-ending wisdom, decided to cut Overhaul's childhood discovery of the quirk rat virus theory. This seems like a small omission at first, but considering that the rat associated with that virus also adorns the insignia of a very important group of people in the current manga, this scene will undoubtedly become pretty important in the future. So it being absent in the anime is not cool. I bring this up now because the Remedial Course arc received a second major cut, which again might not seem that big of a deal at first. Bakugo holding his tongue after remembering Shoto's past. In the manga, this is a tiny panel, so cutting it shouldn't be an issue, right? Not exactly. This panel is insanely important because it clues us in about Bakugo's emotional development. Him realizing that his talk about inflicting violence upon children as a disciplinatory measure is inappropriate in the presence of an abuse victim is a level of tact and social competence that is quite a big deal for Bakugo as a character. Sure, his bigger scene with that one kid later on is in, but losing this small but important moment is disappointing nonetheless, especially considering how it ties in with a scene from later on in the manga, and also considering how small it actually is. You could have easily had that as a little cut-in, and it would have kept that weight and that implication. Luckily, this is really the only negative I have for this arc specifically, since the rest was adapted well. Sure, the better part of 3 episodes might have been a bit too long for such a small arc, but it didn't hamper my enjoyment much. Out of all the arcs in this season, it's probably the most faithfully adapted one, and its excellence from the manga shines equally in the anime. Not really all that much to say really, it's just a well-adapted arc with one very annoying omission. Right then, moving on to the gentle arc, things get a lot more interesting.
We've discussed the good and the bad of the first half of My Hero Academia Season 4, which is a story all about the high stakes involved with saving a tortured young girl from the grips of a depraved madman. With the constant action of the overall arc coming to a close, our heroes and our students are all physically and emotionally drained from everything that's happened. It's at this point that we see a shift in the tone of the season, and also a shift in the attitude regarding the show that you'll see on social media like Twitter or Reddit. While the first half of the season enticed us and kept us interested with new villains and heroes and situations for our students to be in, there's a large population of viewers that feel like the second half of the season lacked all of that, and some viewers straight up just stopped watching once the events of the Yakuza raid were wrapped up. While it is understandable that some on the surface level might feel that there's some sort of lull in the story here, I want to take some time in my review to explain why I never really understood this completely. I want to talk about how my viewpoint of the arc helped me appreciate it in a way that I hope I can at least explain enough during this review to nudge people who are on the fence or skip the Culture Festival arc entirely to give it a second look. From my perspective, these two arcs aren't actually all that different. Yeah, it's easy to say one arc is about the heroes raiding a base full of villains and features a number of battles, while the other is all about Bakugo training in a preschool and the other students going to band camp. But I honestly don't think that that's a fair roundup of everything that's really going on in this second half, so let's go back to my description of the overhaul arc from just a few minutes ago. The first half of My Hero Academia Season 4, which is a story all about the high stakes involved of saving a tortured young girl from the grips of a depraved madman. You see, that in and of itself is an excellent plot hook for a story, and even just that little synopsis gets you excited to see how the heroes are going to go about doing just that. In the first half of the season, we got this really dark and intense section of the series that truly put everyone through the ringer. In the second half, Horikoshi intentionally brings the tone up and makes things very happy and campy, but does he lose sight of the goal that he sets in the first half? No. What drives the second half of the season is the fact that it comes after such a dark and draining portion of the story. The students need some downtime. Everyone needs some time to smile after the heavy events of the last 13 or so episodes. I guess you could argue that this could have been done off screen, but Horikoshi hand feeds you the reason why we're even seeing this. Because while we've been focusing on one aspect of being a hero, the action and the battles, there is still another side to being a true hero. And this section of the story, incidentally, is the perfect time to hammer that down. Yes, Eri was saved by Deku and Mirio in the Heroes, but was she really? That's the question that this arc provides you. Like we said, our students and our heroes need some downtime, but of course that's also true for Eri. The issue is, what does downtime really look like for Eri? What does life look like for a girl that can't be near others? Are things really that different now that she's free from Overhaul? Hori tugs at our heartstrings by showing us that even though she's physically been saved by the heroes, Eri has yet to be saved on an emotional level. She can't smile, she can't enjoy things like a normal child would, and suddenly this arc that's about the students relieving stress for themselves and their classmates becomes a story all about the high stakes involved of saving a tortured young girl from the grips of a depraved madman. Some might laugh at me for using the phrase high stakes when talking about the Culture Festival arc, but I challenge these people and tell them that the issue is their expectation of what high stakes have to be, not Horikoshi's execution of what high stakes are in this arc. There's this notion in the anime community that high stakes are when a character is facing the threat of physical death and things are going down to the wire. I think this definition of the phrase is really limiting and doesn't quite capture the reality of what high stakes are. And a good example are the high stakes of the Culture Festival / Gentle Criminal arc. The season spends the first half doing everything it can to get you invested in Eri and the hero saving her. Once she's away from Overhaul, we see that she still very much has his dark clutches on her mind, but with the Class 1A performance and her visible excitement over seeing Deku and the others dancing and singing, we're finally given a way to truly save Eri from Overhaul and actually complete the purpose of the first half, while also teaching the students a lot about empathy and how hero work doesn't just stop when the fighting stops. Even if you don't care about the band performance, even if you want to skip past Tokoyami learning how to play guitar or Bakugo learning how to trust his teammates, you at least want the performance to happen because of the implications that it has for Eri's character, and that's exactly why when Gentle comes in, it hits so hard. While Gentle isn't the terrifying villain that Overhaul clearly is, he still represents the same threat. If Gentle stops the festival, he keeps the heroes from saving Eri just as much as Overhaul was attempting to do for the entire first half. Now, Gentle's a fun guy who we don't have to worry about killing or maiming any of our characters, but the tension he provides just from trying to invade UA at the worst possible time, while also having the perfect motivations for why he wants to do so, and how compelling Gentle and Deku's struggle was, is the reason that I challenge people to stop being so limiting in their definition of what stakes are. It isn't just about physical danger. It isn't just when a character is facing the threat of physical death. It also applies to characters facing things that aren't so easy to see sometimes, like emotional death, which is definitely what Eri is facing if she doesn't get saved in this arc and the festival is interrupted by Gentle. This is why I think the Culture Festival works so well, and why for the most part I only have positive things to say about it. From an episode to episode point of view, it seemed like the second half of the season got back some of those animators that we'd lost, and overall things looked fairly consistent, and even the downtime moments were given an impressive amount of love when you compare them to some of the shots that we got in the first half. I'm sure there is a bit that can be said about the changes that Bones made to the Gentle fight itself, but I'm sure Ocean has you covered on the more technical side of this arc.
As some of you may know, the Culture Festival is one of my favorite arcs in Hero Aka, so I was and still am very ready to nitpick the hell out of its adaptation. However, I am very happy to say that this arc was, for the most part, done well. As a more lighthearted arc, it had to nail something that wasn't lacking in the overall arc, but was definitely less of a focus. The more mundane but important emotional motivations and connections, not of supervillains and heroes, but of students and outcasts. And luckily, the anime absolutely nails this part. The students get plenty of scenes of just goofing around together, with scenes from the manga being not only enhanced by voice acting and motion, but also expanded upon. I also absolutely loved how the anime handled Gentle and La Brava. Bouncy, hectic, and fun to watch, they came as a wonderfully complete package, even receiving a theme song that sounds like it's straight out of Team Fortress 2. Also, Gentle in the English dub has a fantastic British accent, so bonus points there. All in all, this arc just oozes the love and care that I felt the first half of the season was missing. However, some of the issues from the overall arc persisted, namely that of the characters looking off. Many episodes featured some rather uncanny character arc, and while that rarely got to a point where it was atrocious, it was still sad to see nonetheless. Especially things like stills really have no excuse of looking bad. It's just not a good look. Unfortunately, the biggest problem of this arc came with the Gentle fight. Now, I do want to prefix this real quick. This is my favorite fight in the entire series, and I will be nitpicky. If you don't mind any of this stuff, that's totally fine. However, I was bothered by quite a few things, so let me talk about it. The fight against Gentle is one of the most kinetic fights in the entire manga, with both Deku and Gentle flying and crashing into each other at pretty high speeds. In the manga, this was mostly communicated via speed lines and impact splooshes. The anime, meanwhile, made the brave choice of not communicating that speed and power at all. This here is Deku being flown into at enormous velocity by a powered-up Gentle, and he ever so slightly nudges. It's just overall way too static for the kind of fight that this is. It doesn't sell any of that power. It's just kind of disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, Lover Mode looks like dog shit. Instead of an aura that actually communicates power and pressure, Bones opted to just slap and half-ass stroke and glow onto Gentle and called it a day. It looks like one of those clickbait thumbnails. It's completely inadequate. Finally, and this is probably my hottest take today, the end of the fight includes a pretty impressive Sakuga cut. It's snappy, fast, fantastically animated, and it actively makes the fight worse, and I hate it, and here's why. This fight is there to show how Deku's tactical mind can carry him when he's on his own. The steps he takes here, with his 5-finger Air Force and the following St. Louis Smash, are pretty important and need a certain amount of impact and pizzazz, and a certain amount of dramatic framing, so that you can see and appreciate what is actually happening. The Sakuga cut, however, condenses both of these actions into such a quick sequence that you don't even have time to register what Deku actually does. In an ironic twist, the good animation ends up obscuring the action. I can appreciate that they wanted to bring in some of the speed and power I was complaining about earlier, but I would have rather had that during the scenes where they were flying into each other. Those scenes are very fitting for visual spectacle. But this final confrontation needed to be clear and dramatically framed, and I felt that the quick and snappy way they did it took away from that. Also, and this is super minor, La Brava's Japanese voice actress did not do a very good job at the final scene. She is declaring that she will literally kill herself if Gentle fails, in utter desperation, yet she sounds like just a generic anime girl, very slightly upset. The dub hasn't reached this scene yet, because of the thing I can't say, because demonetization, but I do hope they do a better job at that, because that was really disappointing. It's not all bad though. The flashback scenes were expanded upon fantastically, and my actual favorite moment from this fight, Deku catching Gentle's punch, was done justice and then some. And of course, this fight was immediately followed by Class A's performance, genuinely one of the best episodes of the entire series, taking the spirit and the framework of the manga and transforming it into an intensely emotionally resonant and beautiful musical experience that truly managed to surpass its strong counterpart. Episodes like these are why I fell in love with the show, and I cannot praise that enough. Overall, the Culture Festival was generally well done, with just an unfortunate dip in the Gentle fight. But now, it is time for the Pro Hero arc.
All season, the debate in the community has been about the animation and the quality of the season, but a huge debate that was happening on the side between large swaths of the fandom was, will Bones do the Pro Heroes arc in My Hero Academia Season 4? Well, eventually we got a confirmation that they were indeed covering a portion of this arc at the end of the season, but it wasn't really clear how much. There were people swearing it was impossible to do at all, like period, while others seemed excited at the thought of this arc getting squeezed in at the end.
I have to, again, prefix this. Above all of the pacing issues, all the iffy production, all of the stuff I've complained about so far, nothing has pissed me off as much as Bones' decision to include this arc in Season 4. It makes no sense for a tiny arc like this to be chopped in half. It should have been at the start of Season 5, and the only reason it was included is so that it could cash in on Hawk's popularity earlier. It's the same reason why it was in the movie, and I absolutely hate it. I'm gonna say things about this arc in a second, but it being in this season in the first place is my single biggest issue with My Hero Academia Season 4, and it soured me on most of this season. Now, with that being said, oh my god! Bones! The Pro Hero arc is by far the best adapted section of this season, seamlessly and effortlessly showing the entire fight without any huge concessions. The entire aftermath of the fight being cut out to then presumably be put into Season 5 is a bit annoying, but considering the insane high note this season leaves off of, I can't help but be okay with it. Episode 25 is 20 minutes of the absolute best shit MHA has ever produced. Nakamura, Hayashi, the list goes on, big names and fantastic cuts all over. But that's not even all. Stellar direction and good fucking lighting that doesn't look like it's noon forever. Almost every pitfall that Season 4 fell in during its earlier episodes is completely avoided here, which makes them being in the rest of the season so weird. Sure, there are some minor grievances, like how the music for Hawk's intro speech is absolute garbage, but those are what we in the biz like to call fucking tiny. This is My Hero Academia at its absolute peak, and these fucking mad lads had the balls to even tease Deku's dream in the end. While I think this teaser is somewhat pointless, all things considered, I do appreciate the hype quite a lot.
We ended up getting was quite the spectacle, with the Pro Heroes arc being done in 2 episodes, with some content left over to spill into the beginning of Season 5, which I'm sure is quickly approaching. This was definitely an odd choice since this arc isn't very long in the first place, and probably would have fit really nicely as a hype feast before we're forced to chew down the joint training arc next season, but I guess I can appreciate their decision to do this arc and ultimately Endeavor's big battle, due to how just amazingly they did with it. With a roster of over 20 animators, Bones took a huge team and massive effort to translate the Pro Heroes arc to the screen with love and finesse. The last 2 episodes in the season feel more like a My Hero Academia short movie than they feel like 2 episodes plucked out of the anime, and it was truly so special that fans everywhere found themselves burning up just as much as Endeavor was. High-End's voice was odd at first, but then instantly felt like it fit once the action started. Hawks' first appearance and his quirk were handled and shown off very well in my opinion, and truth be told, once again, it's really hard to find something negative to say about this section of the season without feeling like I'm doing so just for the sake of having something negative to say because this is a review.
What will my rating of Season 4 be as a whole? As you can probably guess, it's very complicated. Pro Hero, The Concert, Infinite 100%, those are some of the highest highs MHA has reached thus far. But so much in between these highs was so wildly inconsistent that I have a hard time calling this the best season yet, especially since my favorite fight in the entire series, Gentle vs. Deku, was kind of shafted. So all things considered, I do think that 7 out of 10 is therefore appropriate.
So, like with the first half, my feelings on scoring this season and this half are hard to come to terms with. The second half of the season and the Culture Festival specifically goes in a direction and does something that I really appreciate, and I feel a special sort of something for the arc because it gets bashed so frequently by meathead fans of the genre who only want constant escalation of threats and danger, but don't realize that there's as many ways to tell a story as there are to receive it. While the second half wasn't always as exciting maybe as the first half, it definitely had just as much, if not more, heart and spirit behind it and in it. This definitely shined through once the whole team got together for that amazing fiery finale, but I'd argue that the team did a good job on the season overall, and my experience with this season was overall positive. I enjoyed myself, I had fun watching my hero, and although there are things I wish were different or were changed, I'm mostly okay with how Season 4 was handled, and I am looking forward to next season, which will hopefully have an even healthier production schedule and team, so that hopefully we can iron out the issues that we saw in this season and see Masahiro Mukai's direction truly flourish when he has access to the full power of what Bones Studio C can do for My Hero Academia during a season. Overall, just like the first half, I'm going to be giving the season an 8.5. I feel like the first half of the season suffered a bit due to production issues, but it still managed to give me that excited, happy feeling I get when I watch the series, and despite a lack of impact throughout the season besides a few key moments like Endeavor vs. Hood or Deku vs. Overhaul, I feel like overall everything was handled well and with care for the original work. Was it the perfect adaptation? No. I'd argue this season of My Hero Academia was great, and while it doesn't quite live up to the past seasons in some aspects, I think it surpasses them in others just enough to stay in that not quite an 8 but not quite a 9 territory in the score department. Hopefully that makes sense and I didn't just ramble for half of Ocean's video, but if so, I want to thank you for having me on anyway, Ocean Man, for this review, and I hope you all enjoyed hearing our thoughts also. This is Vocal Pineapple Academia, paddling my way back to my channel. Peace.
Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Pineapple, for collabing with me and bringing this project to life. It was an absolute blast. Definitely go check out his channel. Check out part 1 of this video if you haven't for some reason. And be safe, wash your hands, and take care. And I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.